I want to welcome everyone to this space that it's called Let's Talk with Andres. I'm Andres Lopera, the CEO of LFS. And as you all know, this is a space to share and talk about innovation, current affairs, economy, and society from the perspective. Today, once again, we have a very special guest with us, a man who's given a lot to talk, not only in the States, but in various parts of the world. Let's welcome Chief Executive Officer for Loadsmart, Ricardo Salgado. Hey, Ricardo, it's really good to see you again, and how are you?
Thank you very much, Andres. Thanks for hosting me. I really appreciate the time. Great to see you and have a conversation.
Great, Ricardo. Thank you. I mean, in a regular basis, I usually do, I try to read a little bit about the background of each one of the persons that we have in this space. But today I went down with you and heard your story. I think it's more rewarding if that story comes from you. So if you can tell us a little bit on what Loadsmart is and how you became CEO and founder of Loadsmart, how long that run was, and
Sure.
a little bit of your background, Ricardo.
Sure, happy to do that. And please feel free to slow me down. I speak exceptionally fast. I don't know if it's because growing up in Bogota or just spending 14 years in New York City. But yeah, my background, I grew up in Colombia, in Bogota. I went to university in Georgia Tech. So I'm an engineer by training. I went to school in Atlanta, pursuing a superior college education abroad. And I was an engineer, did software development, and worked at a startup with my senior design team right out of university. And that was during the internet bubble, which everything collapsed right in front of us. So the company we were working on literally collapsed. We learned a lot. It was one of the best learning experiences that I've had in my career. And I had interned before at Goldman Sachs. So it was a great organization. And then Goldman Sachs basically said, do you want a full-time offer? Do you want to come back? And for me, it was an opportunity to, go to New York, which was a city that I was excited about, and finance was something that was intriguing, as well. And Goldman was a phenomenal brand for me to start my career and learn as much as possible and optimize for learning, which is the culture that I was always given. So I spent 13 years at Goldman Sachs across New York, London, Hong Kong, Brazil, and then back to New York. I started in the investment banking side of it and then went to the investing side across all these regions. And then, along the journey, my learning curve had flattened. I had grown a lot. And we were in the middle of this technology revolution driven by the consumer. And I saw that, we were mobilizing and connecting and digitizing. And I was like, wow, this is the time to go back to those entrepreneurial, roots and build something so that instead of investing in a company, I want to build something from scratch. And at the time I was leading all of our principal investing efforts in the transportation space. And I realized like, wow, transportation is huge, super fragmented and lacks technology. So it's an opportunity to go out there and dig in. So that was the foundation of Loadsmart. But I had the idea 2 years before leaving Goldman Sachs. I left exactly on Friday, February 6th of 2014. And then I was like, okay, I need to reinsert myself into this technology startup ecosystem. So 2 years before I left Goldman Sachs, I started to proactively insert myself into that ecosystem, which included getting on the board of our engineering school at Georgia Tech, identifying that right software engineering talent, getting back my software development skills back up to base because I hadn't practiced in a long time. And then we started Loadsmart, and we incorporated on April 14th, 2014, and our first engineer started on July 1st, 2014, and he's still with us. So that was the foundation of Loadsmart. Loadsmart is a digital freight broker automating full truckload transportation across. We have two main modes. One of them is full truckload. The other one is drayage. We lead by example. We lead by example, but we lead through technology and complemented through an ecosystem of strategic partners who are also investors. So as part of that portfolio of investors, as you know, Maersk, which is the largest ocean liner, 20% of containers come on their vessels. Ports America, largest port terminal operator in the US, a third of all containers come through their ports. They're also an investor in Loadsmart. And others, other strategic partners like Daimler, largest trucking OEM out there, all the leading transportation management systems, we've integrated with them. Think about like the Oracle, the BlueJay, the One Networks, the Mercury Gates, and many others that we haven't announced. So that's the foundation of Loadsmart. We're headquartered in New York City. We have offices in Chicago, Brazil, and Colombia. 40% of our team are engineers and data scientists. Our mission is to move more with less, and we're obsessed about pushing the boundaries of innovation. Everything we look at from a technology perspective, tech first. So anything is any type of automation, all that engineering is something that we're very obsessed about. Over to you, Andres.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's why I wanted you to be the one telling your story, because I do believe it's a really cool. And Ricardo, before we jump into Loadsmart and strategic partnership, which would you share with us? And this is something that I read somewhere. And it's the fact, it's a quote that you like very much. It's a Mark Twain quote that it says, "You don't regret what you do, you regret what you don't do." Can you elaborate on that? Why do you like it so much, and how do you apply that quote to your success?
Yeah, sure. So I think that, you know, I live my life. I have a purpose. I want to leave a legacy. I want to live, like, be intentional of every week. So as I reflect on my life, I believe that I have 50 more years in this world, and that means that I have 2,600 more weeks in this world. So I want to make each one day count. And in order, or every 1 week count. So next week, instead of 2,600 weeks left in my life, I'll have 2,599. So I'm very intentional on what I do every week. So that quote refers to, like, you don't regret what you do, you regret what you don't do. Take calculated risks. I'll rather try and fail than not try and not know. And that's how I live my life, taking calculated risks around the journey. And I mean, starting Loadsmart is the foundation of that. Is a perfect example, because, you know, I was at Goldman Sachs for 13 years. I had grown tremendously from analyst to managing director. I had all the support of that organization. So leaving an organization like that, where you've, like, been across the globe and have all the support for the most senior folks, to all of a sudden build something from zero, like, that's a very difficult decision. And at that juncture, when I was deciding to leave Goldman Sachs, for example, I was like, I applied that quote, and I'm like, well, I can stay here, and then in 5 years, I can continue to do amazing career development, people, opportunity, compensation, promotion, all that stuff, right? But I put myself in 5 years and be like, what I would rather, do I want to be in 5 years and be like, hey, I didn't try Loadsmart and I didn't know? Or what I'd rather be like, hey, given my all, I'm confident it's going to be successful. But if I don't try, I'm just simply not going to know. And I just don't want to have that question mark in my life. And I think that we, all human beings, should be intentional around what they love. I think definition of success is happiness. So live with what makes you happy every day. I optimize for experiences. Building Loadsmart has been an amazing experience. Every weekend I try a different, you know, experience. So that's why it's my favorite quote. Like, don't regret what you do, regret what you don't do. Live your life like it was the last week of your life, and it's a collection of treasures.
I totally concur with your statement, Ricardo. And by the way, did you, or do you have some, like, mentors on your way to where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always people. So I think that I'm obsessed about continuous improvement. So who are the best, and surrounding yourself through the best. And because obviously there's always people that are older than you, meaning that have more experience than you. So I'm always looking up on who are those amazing people who are pushing the boundaries of innovation. How can I learn from those from those guys? I think that, I mean, Elon Musk is pretty inspirational. I mean, think of what Elon Musk has done, right? In 2002, he says, let me build, SpaceX. And that's because I want to make humanity a multi-planetary species. And everybody thought he was crazy. This guy's, I mean, are you nuts? And he's like, I'm going to build rockets that self-launch. Are you nuts? Like, Northrop Grumman and Boeing have been around since 1916 and 1930. And they have all the engineering power, they have the brand, they have the capital, they have the connections to the government. And they weren't the first ones to build the Falcon 9, a landing rocket. It was actually SpaceX. That was a company that was founded in 2002. And in 2015 or 13 years later, they did that amazing accomplishment. And then 2 weeks ago, we saw that Crew Dragon go out there. But I share that example, with you because you want to always look at big guys like that are thinking up and are basically proving that, nothing is impossible. So to go direct to your question, through my journey at different stages, there are different mentors that you just look up, and it's your responsibility to proactively look for them and how they can add value to complement your skill set, so you can elevate your game. And I'm happy to. It's all the way from when you're very little. It's obviously your dad. I mean, my dad was amazing. He has a photographic memory. But then when you go to university, like I surrounded myself by I had this guy. His name is Greg Sikowitz, and he was running the portfolio manager of the student foundation at Georgia Tech. And he was on CNBC when he was like 19 years old, telling the world that how he should invest and where to invest. And I'm like, I'm 17 as a freshman at Georgia Tech, and this guy's 19, and he's on CNBC being interviewed on where the market is going. I want to do that. So he became that type of mentor. And then the person that unlocked Goldman Sachs for me, he became a mentor to me, which I still remain in touch. So anyway, along the journey, there are different mentors that have different skill sets that you should always proactively pursue to elevate your game.
Great. Now, as we jump into the Loadsmart success story, you know what they say that, owners and companies are connected through this DNA that identifies what the company is, if the owner really reflects the same thing. Is there any key goals or core values that Ricardo Salgado shares along with Loadsmart in their DNA?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, so I have an executive coach, and I think that, he coaches a bunch of amazing entrepreneurs, and that I learn a lot through that. And we discussed this a bit, and he always says that usually when you start a company, the culture of the company is basically a reflection of your own individual culture, because you started from zero. So I was fortunate to build Loadsmart from zero. It was just 1, 2, 3 people. And really proud of what we built. So it gave us the opportunity to be intentional on the culture, our mantra, our values, our mission, why are we here? So they're definitely very, aligned. And I'll share a few with you. Our biggest assets are our people. So I know a lot of people obsess with that, but we really mean it. So that means that you got to identify amazing people. You need to filter them with a hiring formula. You need to onboard them. You need to train them. You need to develop them, and you need to retain them. And that's not easy. So you have to have the right principles, and you got to obsess about it, because they want to elevate their game. So great A players want to work with A+ players, right? They don't want to work with B players or C players. So obsess about people. Teamwork is another one that is super important. Obsession with continuous improvement, meaning that, if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're not growing because you're the smartest person in the room. So make sure that you surround yourself by amazing, diverse people that can just elevate your game. So I don't like to be the guy that knows the most in the room, because then I'm not elevating the game. So hire, around that. And then, we run a nimble organization, so very flat, try to limit the bureaucracy. Ultimately, So there's no politics, and really pushing the boundaries of innovation. Nothing is impossible. Look what Elon Musk did on SpaceX. Look what he's doing with Tesla. So those are generically those cultures and values at Loadsmart: responsibility, ethics, integrity, all that. All those are table stakes. But the ones that are not table stakes are obsession with continuous improvements, teamwork, push the boundaries of innovation, obsess about the customer. Reputation takes 10 years to build it and a second to lose it. So obsess with reputation, take calculated risks, in summary.
Great. Now that you mentioned the people, Loadsmart, and I know that for a fact, it's recognized for his teamwork and his entire team of the talent that is available in the market.
Andres, I did not hear, you cut out the last sentence. Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, I say, yeah, I say that now that you mentioned people, Loadsmart, I know that for a fact that is recognized for his teamwork, for the people that they hire. Would you share with us what kind of efforts Loadsmart go into hire, like some of the best people available in the market?
Yeah, that's super important. And remember, great people attract other amazing people. And it's a diverse group. I mean, we have a software developer that never went to university, but started to code when he was 6 years old, and he'll run circles around the guy that went to MIT. And we have the MIT PhD from product. We have the Stanford MBA, as well. We have the Caltech, California Institute of Technology PhD, who won the silver medal in the Math Olympics globally 15 years ago. So we have all of that gamut. I would say that smart people want to work with smarter people. So we really spend and are very intentional in, number one, identifying the talent. Where does it reside? Where are the best engineers? What companies do they, where were they trained, and why are they the best? So number one is identify the talent. Number two is engage, the talent. And number three is really filter the talent. And that's really complex. And so we spend a lot of time around what is our hiring formula. So what we realized, for example, is that and every time you are interviewed at Loadsmart, we'll have a hiring formula, and that means that the interviewer is evaluating that person, that potential employee, based on 5 formulas, and it's his responsibility, the interviewer, to make sure that you have clarity of the score of these 5 characteristics or attributes that we're going after. And what we learn is that once we apply data on our team, is usually the most amazing people are usually exceptionally curious at Loadsmart, and that's our formula, one of our elements. So we obsess and we optimize for exceptionally curious people. And when we find them, then we identify them, then we test them for curiosity, and that usually is a good leading indicator if you'll do very well at Loadsmart or not. So in summary, you have to have clarity and design the right process around identifying the talent, hanging out where the talent resides, making sure it is diverse, like I just mentioned, and then being very objective on how you evaluate that talent so that you minimize the hiring mistakes and you attract the best people. And then once you hire them, you need to make sure that you onboard them correctly, that they have the right culture and values that your company has, like Loadsmart. And you have to make sure you develop them, you train them, you create the right culture, that we're all growing, that we have a purpose, that we're all like, it's not just like we're going to a job, but we're leaving a legacy behind. So all those things come into play to identifying talent and also retaining it. Because the last thing you want to do is hire the person and then lose them 2 seconds later. So it goes beyond just hiring and identifying the talent. I can't hear you. I think you're muted, Andres.
I'm sorry. how do you
Much better.
how do you in this diverse environment that you have managed to complete, how do you like manage work climate within a company that is small in size of the people but large in his functions and footprint in the industry?
How do we manage it? So, I mean, listen, our mission is to move more with less, which means how do you do more with less people? How do you optimize? How do you automate? How do you digitize? This is not a perfect example, but WhatsApp was a company that sold to Facebook in 2003 for $19 billion, and they only had 55 people. And you had Motorola at the time that was worth a fraction or $3 billion at the time and had 5,000 people, to give you some perspective. So we do move a physical asset, and there are some, exception reporting. So you do need some people, but for us, it's all about what is the right technology? How do you digitize? How do you automate? And how do you do more with less? How do you move more with less? How do you do more with less? And that's ingrained into the fabric, which is our uniting culture, ultimately. So that's how you train, you develop, and you have the right product managers that enable you. So when we're in front of we've acquired 25% of Fortune 100 clients. So think about, I mean, the public ones out there, think about Coca-Cola, Kraft Heinz, Anheuser-Busch, Daimler, Mercedes-Benz, et cetera. And you know some of our partners out there. And at the beginning, you go to the first one and you only have one big client. So it's a little bit intimidating. But if you build a phenomenal product that is going to solve their pain points, then they'll open up and they'll listen. And in today's world, if you're not listening to technology and comparing notes, then you're going to be left behind. And that applies to these large, or organizations. An example of that, I mean, Maersk, we went to, we got invited to the World of Connections conference 6 months ago, or in November of last year. And, the keynote speaker was a chairman of Maersk, and he was also a chairman of Siemens, which is a massive company. And formerly he was a co-CEO of SAP, which is 250,000 plus, organization. And he was talking about innovation, and he was very clear. And he said, hey guys, like we need true innovation is a junction of ideas and agility that comes from startups that were born in the digital age with the incumbent that have the scale, the brand, the customers, and then you can really optimize and distribute that innovation. So we firmly believe in that, and I think there's recognition out there from those large companies. So even if you're small in terms of people and brand, and you haven't been around for 20 years, you can have a deep impact with today's technology, infrastructure, and connectivity and ideas.
Now that you mentioned the Maersk case, why focusing on industry leaders and not in attracting as many shippers and carriers as possible, like everyone in the industry does it,
We do as well. I mean, so that's just, so we believe that, the land grab is not to acquire a customer or a carrier, because a customer or a carrier will work with multiple players. They'll work with LFS, they'll work with us, they'll work with multiple players, right? But once you have an exclusive commercial agreement with a strategic partner, that's it, you're it. So the land grab does not, so you got to think tactically. So if you take a step back when you build a company like Loadsmart, you have to have a hypothesis or a vision of how you build it, right? And then you have to create strategy to basically execute upon that strategy to get to that vision. So for us, we realized that, this is relatively manual, it's inefficient, it's over email, and it's over phone. And we believe that there's a secular shift from analog to digital. So there's this digitization, digital transformation. And as you're going through that digital transformation, what does that mean? It's how do you digitize or create the plumbing into shippers and into carriers in a digital programmatic way. It's not dissimilar to what Uber did by building the plumbing or the rails into a rider and a driver via a mobile app, right? It was a mobile app technology that distributed it and then connected it. And that enabled you to hop on your phone to see all the cars available, click on a button, and then all of a sudden you get an Uber 2 minutes late. It's not that you're calling somebody with a better service, customer service, better dispatching service to still request that Uber car. No, they removed that friction. So for us, it's like, how do we remove the friction so that we digitize? It's more complex because it's not B2C, it's B2B. So we do these integrations, we provide programmatic capacity in the native system of these shippers across all lanes, and then we can enable rules to automate that demand so that a load planner doesn't even know that he had that shipment available, and then automatically the system managed it end to end without a human being, i.e. replacing a phone call with an API call. So because we had clarity that this was the future, then we started focusing on that, and we realized like, hey, you know what? Being a customer of Coca-Cola, we're not going to be the only customer of Coca-Cola, but getting Maersk on your board, that's it. You know, getting Ports America, like that, it's just, you know, so we had clarity. So it's important as you build these things to take a step back. What are you doing? What is your strategy? And what is your go-to-market? And then execute around that strategy. And I feel that most people fail to get clarity around all those things because we're busy. And I think that spending, I mean, that's a lot of my time on the weekend is taking a step back and having a little bit of that alone time to design and brainstorm around that tactical approach to execute on that strategy.
Now that you mentioned the digital era and AI and all that stuff, would you consider Loadsmart a truly digital freight broker? You know, that word has been misunderstood or misplaced in the industry, but would you consider Loadsmart has used that word as it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that we're in that journey to digitization. And what that means is that not all of it is digital. Some of it is over the phone because our customers are still over the phone. There's an adoption curve. So remember, in technology, our responsibility is to remove friction. If you remove friction and provide instant gratification, you get instant adoption. If you don't remove friction, then the adoption is going to take forever. So in the journey of digitization, what digitization means, or a digital broker for us means, is exactly what I just said at the beginning, which it means that a large client like a Coca-Cola or a Kraft or whatever client, the ERP of that client talks to the TMS digitally. The TMS talks to us via API digitally. Then we get capacity programmatically into that TMS. And then that TMS, it has rules based that we inserted there to autonomously accept that shipment without a human being touching it, grabbing it. So it went from ERP to TMS to Loadsmart API back to TMS, and it's booked and then it's communicated to the ERP. It gets, you know, tracked, delivered, invoiced on in a digital. That is what I define as a digital transaction, and that is what I define as a digital freight broker. Now, there's a lot of folks out there that say digital because it's fancy and they want to be tech and all that type of stuff, and 100% of what they do is over the phone or over email. And that's not digital. What I just gave you is what I define as a digital freight broker. I will share with you that 90% of our transactions are in that format, and 10% are, they call us, they email us, and that's okay. So those 10% are not a digital, it's over email, it's over phone and all, and that's okay, because as we continue to grow, there's an adoption curve. So you always have that 10% that is in that adoption curve where they're coming in, they're learning, they're engaging, and then they try, and then they go into that digital format.
Now you mentioned over your answer, you mentioned the word autonomous, and probably 90% of the people that are in this webinar is actually people that even own or work for a 3PL, freight forwarder, trucking company, any logistics intermediary that it's on the market. We were very afraid when the whole Uber and autonomous trucking came live. And I recently read a story about Loadsmart joining forces with Starsky on something similar to that AI for like for trucking, autonomous driving. Would you tell us a little bit about that and how was that doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe that as a leader, as a tech first digital freight broker, or anytime you're in technology, it's your responsibility to think forward. where are we going to be in 5 years, and how do you make sure that you're in pole position and navigate to be in pole position always? If not, you're going to get disrupted. And you know, a perfect example of that is Reed Hastings at Netflix, right? So he disrupted Blockbuster by basically doing the mail DVD order, where instead of you going to a store and getting a rental movie, right? He said, like, there's too much friction. You have to go there, you have to walk there, you got to pay there. If you're there for more, if you take the movie for more than 2 days, you got to pay penalties. So he completely disrupted that with the DVD rental. He mails it to you, you can have it unlimited. It was great, right? Blockbuster went away. And then, you know, he reinvented himself as we started seeing 4G and 5G and internet streaming, and he realized that the future wasn't a mailing the DVD, right? Because there's too much friction. It's less friction than you going to the store, but there's still friction. But so he removed his own friction and he disrupted himself by becoming the leader in streaming, and that's the definition of Netflix. And that's something that is really, really, really difficult to do. So anyway, that's a long story short to share that I obsess, and at Loadsmart we obsess, where's technology going to be in 5 years? And you cannot ignore autonomous trucks. You cannot ignore automation. You cannot ignore digitization. And most human beings, because human beings are creatures of old habits, we're very comfortable and we're very defensive. Human beings by nature they don't like to change, and they're comfortable, and they're very defensive. So you have no idea how many times I've been in meetings with large corporations and I'm like, this is where it's going. And they're like, that's never going to happen. I'm too big. And then 2 years later, they're back knocking on the door. So I think that for me, it's always a learning in terms of human beings to like put your guard down and understand a little bit and be open to that type of change. So it's a long way for me to tell you on the self-driving truck. It's not an if, it's a when. I think it's going to take longer than everybody expects or thinks, but you got to get ready for it. So if you ignore it, you're not going to get ready for it, and you're going to get disrupted, and you will be the Blockbuster. You won't be the Netflix, and you want to be the Netflix. I want to be the Netflix. So the sooner that you have those honest and difficult conversations and embrace them, then the better prepared you will be to go out there and go along those. That doesn't mean that your business is going to be over. That just means that things evolve, things improve. It's part of human development. Technology doesn't just it's not going to be a bunch of robots. And no, you need people to build those robots. You need people to programming. It's not as simple as that. So I highly recommend to embrace it. And the last thing I'll say on this is, yeah, we were talking about automation, right? So I explained the automation on the demand. For us, utopia, the utopia fully digitized world is that a shipper books autonomously, meaning ERP talks to TMS, talks to us via API, gets a price, and has rules based where it accepts by itself. Then we source the carrier in our network of carriers, which means that we see all these trucks, we match the ideal one, and it's accepted autonomously as well, meaning the dispatcher didn't even know that load was available or that truck was available either, but it's fully autonomous. And then a self-driving truck picks it up and drops off. That's utopia. So, and so the question, we're not ready there. We're not there yet. Not everything is in that format, but I can tell you that we're more ready than we were 2 years ago or a year ago or 6 months ago. So it's just recognizing and doing step by step and being intentional on how you want to participate in the future.
As you keep talking, I keep receiving in our chat a lot of questions. People are really excited. And this my answer some of the questions. It's what excites you more when it comes to the future of Loadsmart and freight itself? People are asking, hey, listen, you have an office in Brazil, you have an office in the States, you have an office in Colombia. What's next? It's any other country in the side for Loadsmart? Is there any other project that Loadsmart is excited about in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's always product expansion and regional expansion. So my recommendation and advice, and I was very fortunate by one of my mentors that always said, when there's 20 priorities, nothing's a priority. So you got to prioritize before you do everything. So we want to do excellent at what we do, be deep and narrow instead of wide and shallow. So, the US is a massive market. We focus in the US, we focus on full truckload, and we extended into drayage because we had unique partnerships with the industry leaders of the largest ocean liner and the largest port terminal operator, right? So that enabled us to go out. So anytime we gain an edge, and it could be multiple, we just launched transloading services. So anytime we gain an edge through those, then you see us move in that direction, but it's very intentional. I think that there are definitely global ambitions. It's not going to be a 2020 event. Most likely it will be second half of 2021 to 2022, and it goes in line with when there's 20 many priorities, nothing's a priority. So that's what's next. But we measure everything around our mission, which is to move more with less. How do we move 20% more goods with 20% less trucks, for example? And it's all a data problem. So we're inserted into this digitization. We'll put fuel on the fire on this digitization, and then it will come. It's an easier answer along all that journey if you want to do product expansion or regional expansion.
Now, this is a question that I might ask, and I have to ask, and is COVID-19. I mean, what are the challenges and opportunities from Loadsmart that you're seeing?
Yeah, sure. So I'll say COVID-19 had a short-term effect, medium effect, and long-term effect. So over the short term, around March, we saw a surge in CPG essentials. So think about like the largest like business essential foods, it just surged dramatically. One-off record, never seen something like that. And now they stabilize. So instead of you eating at a restaurant, you're eating at home. So you stocked up at home, basically. And then, so that was a long-term first, then medium term, as we were in standstill, all manufacturing and services really dropped 50, 80% and all that. And now it's recovering, basically. So I can share with you, and then long-term, it had a profound effect in accelerating the digital transformation. So you started seeing, e-commerce just accelerated. So if you think about e-commerce penetration, in 2000, it was less than 1%. Last year, it was 14%, meaning that 14% of retail was e-commerce or was online, right? And now that just got accelerated. On April 29th, the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, basically said, we saw 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. He saw Teams, right? Teams daily active users double from 32.5 million to 75 million users in a month. You saw Zoom, which we're on right now, basically say that in December, they saw 10 million participants. And in April, they had over 200 million participants, for example. So that's like, that means that the whole digital transformation has accelerated. Us at Loadsmart personally, we completed more integrations in Q2 of this year than we did all of 2019. And then finally, human beings are all about incentives. So transportation leaders, usually top priority is to move their goods from A to B, and they need to make sure A to B, that's it. And 1% is technology. But with COVID, the supreme C-level executives are now pushing those transportation leaders to give more technology. And if you're not thinking about technology, you're being left behind. So we're getting more inbound calls around digitizations and integrations than we've ever had.
Great. Now, people keep asking me about the Maersk piece. Maersk it's a magnet. I mean, everything related to logistic, when it comes to Maersk as a name, everyone wants to be involved. Would you share with us, besides the fact that it's part of your investors, part of your board, on the work basis, how involved is Loadsmart in Maersk?
A lot. I mean, you can make it as much or as little as possible. But for us, there are a lot. So when we do these partnerships and more investors, it needs to mean something. This is not just write a sheet of paper and then goodbye. No. We really, so we have to have the right people involved. So with Maersk, MaerskTransportation.com is powered by Loadsmart, for example. So all of that, our drayage launch was jointly, configured and produced with them, for example. And we're very close on like collaboration on our technology, on our automation, on our track and trace capabilities, and our automated invoicing, on client distribution channels, all of those things. They're definitely in the middle of all those conversations. They sit on our board. We have weekly calls with their operations team in Charlotte. We probably have definitely a monthly call with their guys in Copenhagen, and there's active dialogue, active collaboration for sure.
Okay. Now, how there's a saying in the industry that you should always measure a KPI for you to measure should be $1 million per FTE on your back office. And that's how, let's say, that's how you can manage to know if you're being very successful managing your back office team. I'm not talking about revenue in this case, but how, I mean, how much impact has had in Loadsmart the fact that you're a truly digital freight broker as far as transactions goes into your company. So you just said we have a very small team, but how big transaction wise is Loadsmart compared to the amount of people that they have? Is there a ratio that you guys have in order to keep that in mind?
Yeah, I would say that the information that I can share with you is that we've acquired 25% of Fortune 100 clients. So if you go down the list and who are the ones that ship FTL, 25% are clients of Loadsmart. And when you integrate in a digital format, instead of having the typical broker that you have to stay in, connect, and you have to build, we all have to build trust, don't get me wrong. But remember, every time a shipper requests a quote, there's friction. It's similar to when you go to Expedia to book a flight. When you say www, when you open the browser, that's step one, you click on the search button and you go www.expedia.com and boom, that's friction. Now, when you enter from Miami, there's friction, to Medellin, that's friction, to press, there's friction, to the price, there's friction. So for us, think about like the typical journey of a load of that person going out there. I need to move this. Let me call people. Let me email people. Let me wait for they respond. So what we've done is just remove that friction. So our clients, what I can tell you is that their full truckload spend is over $20 billion. Like that's how much we don't see all of that, right? We get to quote a big chunk of that via RFPs or via contracted and via spot business. But because most of it is or 90% of it is in the digital format, it's not a human being. So we don't need 2,000 people quoting in a football yard in the prior format. We don't need that because it's an algorithm that provides that type of data and prices it instantly. I move more with less. I do more with less.
Great. And I know we're running out of time here. I just want to ask you a couple questions. And the first one, it's you're Colombian. How big your roots are in Colombia, not family wise, but like work wise? I mean, are you like, do you envision that you're gonna give back to Colombia just a little bit of that success that you have got in the States?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with success comes responsibility, and going back to your roots is something that's really, 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 really important. So my view on life, there's 3 stages in my life. The first stage was knowledge acquisition. Number 2 is business development and financial development, and the third one is giving it all back. And part of that giving it all back goes back to like educating. So I firmly believe that we suffer in this inequality in the world, right? And it's very politicized, and this huge inequality between the rich and the poor. And I believe that the way to bridge that gap is through education. So we have to give people the access to education. I mean, I come from nothing, nowhere, and it was education that gave me the opportunity. So I was very fortunate to get the right scholarship, to get to the right university, to open up the opportunity to go Goldman Sachs, and then go to New York and surround myself by amazing people that taught me a lot, but it was all around education. So what does that have to do with Colombia? Absolutely. So I have at Georgia Tech, I have a scholarship And that scholarship is, for people, it's actually also because we only have 30% females. So it's Latin American, Colombian, female that wants to do engineering. That's where it's targeted, because we only have 30% females that are engineers. So it's how do you equalize it a little bit, and how do you give back in something that I'm passionate about, which is via education. And then more roots on Colombia. I mean, like, I grew up in Colombia. I was there until I was 17 years old. We're going through our high school class reunion that's going to be via Zoom on Friday, June 20th, believe it, on Saturday, June 20th, for example. So we all get together, Zoom, we tell the stories. We're all over the place. I go to Colombia probably once a year. And I still have, a big chunk of my family out there.
Perfect. And this is the last question, Ricardo, and thank you again for
Anytime.
having the time to this webinar. There's at least dozen people that asked me this question within the last 5 minutes. Is 90% of the people that are in this webinar are the regular freight broker, 3PL, emails, phone calls, and as you said, I mean, you have to consider what the future is going to be like. What type of advice you give to those entrepreneurs, those logistics fighters out there that actually are looking forward to coming from being this legacy type of freight forwarder or 3PL and become a digital freight broker or transportation provider? What type of advice can you give them?
Yeah, I would say that, human beings are creatures of old habits. So we change is difficult. And I think you have to be more intentional and proactive to think about those things, and then pursue them, to be honest, and be proactive of where technology is going, and give it a shot, and don't give up early, and persistence. Like Thomas Edison say, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So it's not the idea, it's the perspiration that really gets you to that genius level. So you got to be persistent, to force yourself against your natural tendencies to I'm comfortable, and look for that change. Look for better technology, educate yourself, be super curious. What's the future look like? Take a view on, you might be wrong. I'm wrong many times, but I'll rather take a view and analyze it and be wrong than not have a view. Don't take a position, don't analyze, and don't have a hypothesis. So I think that, for all those folks that operate in a more manual world, I think you have a great relationship with your clients. You know them very, very well. You get an edge as a result of that. But think about what tools via technology you can provide to remove friction or pain points for your ultimate clients, because then you'll really keep them forever. And if that's through technology, if that's through partnerships, that's how we have done it, at Loadsmart. But that's how I would be thinking if I were in their shoes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Well, I think that was all for today. I want to thank you, for spending the time. Really, like always with you, really a tremendous learning experience, and looking forward to talk to you again. And everyone else, just remind that they can contact us and they can see the video through LinkedIn or through the regular social media channels. And if you require our services, just go through our website and we'll be happy to accommodate whatever need you have. Ricardo, once again, thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you very much for hosting me, Andres. And anything that you need from me, please let me know. And best wishes. Stay safe, and up to next time.
Likewise.
Abrazo.
Bye, Ricardo.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye, ciao.